System. Boss, our goal is to fulfill the last wish of the innocent and tragic cannon fodder female supporting role. Ruan Tang. I know system. But you are following the invincible boss route of encountering gods, killing gods, and encountering demons. Ruan Tang. Did the female supporting role not turn around and take over? Did cannon fodder turn against fate and become a god? System. You are the assailant of Shimmy Ruan Tang. Is there anything more satisfying than being a big boss, a big demon king, and a big villain? P.S. This article focuses on mischievous Su Shuang. The female protagonist is not the Virgin Mary. There are thick golden fingers. Refreshing and refreshing. Pet, pet, pet. Keywords of the novel. Fast-wearing cannon ashes woman equipped with poisonous no pop-ups, fast-wearing cannon ashes woman equipped with poisonous TXT complete collection download, fast-wearing cannon ashes woman equipped with poisonous latest chapters read. 1. Chapter 1. The distance from artillery to genius, 1. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. The distance from artillery to genius, 1, hiss. What's wrong with me? Before Ruan Tang could react, he felt powerless all over and flipped over, falling straight out of bed. After the pain hit his head on the floor, Ruan Tang finally regained consciousness. She was still fighting against the zombie leader to save a city, but when she opened her eyes, she found a new world. Stubborn, come out quickly and tell me what's going on. She frowned and spoke. A cute male voice rang out in the open room. My name is 477. Ruan Tang rubbed his brows with one hand in his soft stomach, which he didn't know how long he had been hungry for. 477 is not just dead, it's giving you an elegant and generous name for free. You should know how to be grateful. 477. At this moment, Ruan Tang's consciousness was much clearer. She looked around and found herself in the princess's room, which was mainly decorated with pink and white. There were several paintings hanging on the walls, which looked like works by famous artists. And the surroundings of the oversized princess bed in front of me are also pink gauze curtains, and the bedding is even more impressive, indicating that the girl living here is also a romantic one. Everything in this room indicates that the girl comes from a good family, but why does she feel like she's about to faint from hunger? Stubborn, what's going on? Ruan Tang was very frustrated, even in the end world, she was not hungry. How could she almost faint from hunger in such a peaceful and comfortable world? 477 sighed helplessly and didn't argue with her for a title. The question was, do you still remember things from the previous world? Ruan Tang gave a contemptuous look to let him realize for himself, you don't know how good my unforgettable memory is. Although the living environment in the apocalypse is harsh, she hasn't stayed enough yet. After finally conquering a city, she cultivated a loyal and sincere army, and finally created a new post-apocalyptic city. She never overcame the addiction of the post-apocalyptic queen before entering this world again. Loss. What a loss. What is the use of the system and what is the use of integration? Her city. Her army. Her queen's throne. Everything is gone. As soon as you saw Ruan Tang's expression 477, you could guess what she was mourning. But their mission has been completed, the cannon fodder has counterattacked, their points have doubled, and they can even buy snacks without restraint. Why are they still staying in that world? Do you really create and rule the world as a queen? 477 calmly said, then you must remember how you self-destructed to save a city. The room suddenly fell silent. Ruan Tang supported the floor with both hands, his chin resting on the edge of the bed, and said with a sorrowful expression, I'm clearly a villain, why can't I always control my desire to be a good person? Damn it. 477 quickly reminded. Host, our mission is to fulfill the sole wish of the innocent and tragic cannon fodder female supporting character. The mission from the previous world has already been exceeded, and you have done an excellent job. The hosts of other people's homes are cute, obedient, and strictly follow the tasks published by the system, without any violations. His family's host, turning over to higher positions is just a small matter, changing fate against the heavens is like playing around. Even if she was penalized with points deducted and electrocuted, it couldn't stop her heart from wanting to be the demon king, villain, and ultimate boss. But what can we do? Choose your own host, even kneel down and spoil it. Ruan Tang kept rubbing his soft belly and said, but then again, this body is a bit better than the one in the previous world. 477 Kind reminder. Host, if you don't eat anything again, you will really starve to death. The restless host is immersed in a soft belly. Ruan Tang squinted his eyes and said, this touch, as a woman, I can't put it down anymore. 477. What's bothering the host? He's just a child. The new article is being collected in advance, and we are about to open a pit. Please collect it. End of this chapter. 2. Chapter 2. The Distance from Artillery to Genius, 2. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. The Distance from Artillery to Genius, 2. Disdain belongs to disgust, but the host cannot be left unattended. 477 opened the system space storage cabinet and clicked on the various monster jerky that the world host had stored her favorite. With a flash of white light from the storage pavilion, the item quickly fell in front of Ruan Tang. 477, host, your favorite monster jerky, life safety is the key to completing our mission. What? Ruan Tang, who was so hungry that he felt dizzy, kept touching his soft belly with his fingers. His body was really comfortable. 477 closed his eyes fiercely. Everyone else's home is a host who can't complete the mission and wants to commit suicide. When he arrived at his house, the host was heartless, but he could always force him to want to commit suicide. What a sin! Did he get his brain struck by lightning and find himself a hell to come back from? In silence, 477 points were used as the lightest punishment item. A freezing point fell on Ruan Tang's forehead, and a slight tingling pain came. Ruan Tang immediately regained his senses. Stubborn, if you have something to say, who allowed you to use lynching? Ruan Tang pinched his brow, and the feeling of the electric shock was still surging inside his body. This dead child doesn't know how to hurt anyone, it's really amazing. 477 remained calm and said expressionlessly, in order to complete the task, the host's life safety must be guaranteed. Ruan Tang looked at the dried meat of the exotic beast in front of him and felt a pang of pain, lamenting from the bottom of his heart, my world has been lost. It's been so hard to conquer the world, and the reward that hasn't arrived yet has been lost. Is there anything more despairing than this? No. 477. Why is his host so playful? Boss, why don't you eat some? We still need to do tasks and earn points to reach the peak of our lives. 477 advised her with great care. The main reason for being punished is that he is starving, and it is probably him. Ruan Tang remained unmoved and said, you put them away, and I'll take them out and enjoy them when I'm no longer sad. 477 hesitated. But aren't you very hungry? Although reluctant to part with the world and the position of queen that has been won through hard work, one still cannot show mercy to things that have been eaten. This is the host of his inconsistent words and expressions. Ruan Tang waved his arm with a magnificent and heroic expression and said, so what? If you come, settle down. The current predicament is not a big deal, I will still lay a foundation for myself. 477 rolled his eyes and said. It's fine again. However, in a familiar planet and world, I naturally want to use the most delicious food in this world. Ruan Tang looked around but couldn't find anything to eat. She obediently got up and slowly walked to the door, only to find that it was locked. Originally, the original owner was locked in his own home, his own room. She walked to the balcony again and glanced downstairs at the luxurious villa, garden, and swimming pool, as well as various precious tree species, indicating that the original owner's family background was extraordinary. Even in such a wealthy home, one may faint from hunger, as there seems to be a big hidden trick. Ruan Tang returned to his bedroom bed and lay down, in order for me to have a full stomach and embark on the path of dominance, quickly pass on the plot to me. 477 finally breathed a sigh of relief. You must have remembered the plot. He passed on the plot to Ruan Tang, and when he saw Ruan Tang accepting it, he closed his eyes and knew she was meditating, but he didn't dare to disturb her. His host doesn't know what he did before he died, anyway, it's a big deal. Even the highest level managers are afraid of her. Once, after completing a task in a world with difficulty level SSS+, they received 10 times the points, but were questioned by other task takers for being unfair. As a result, the leader directly threw the questioner into the task world experienced by his host. As soon as the questioner arrived at the mission world, their spirits were destroyed. Then, there won't be any further, but everyone is even more afraid of their host. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. The Distance from Artillery to Genius, 3. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. The Distance from Artillery to Genius, 3. Ruan Tang closed his eyes, but his mind seemed to be playing a movie, with frame-by-frame images on the illusory screen depicting the life of a blooming girl who died with hatred. The original owner and she share the same name, also known as Ruan Tang. She has a twin brother named Ruan Song. After her parents divorced, the original owner was taken by her mother who quickly remarried, while the younger brother followed their father, whom both siblings liked very much. The original owner also had a fiancée, who was the male protagonist of this world and the young owner of an entertainment company, named Zhou Jiacheng. However, the male lead is always reserved for the female lead. The original owner is just cannon fodder in this world. The real female protagonist in this world is called Chen Yunnuo. She was an orphan who was sponsored by her mother to join the wealthy women's circle and learn how to do charity. Later, she was taken home by her mother and recognized as her goddaughter. The original owner had never felt his mother's love, but her mother was so kind to an unrelated outsider, even her stepfather, who always only had interests in his eyes, showed affection and favor towards Chen Yunnuo. On the surface, Chen Yunnuo appears gentle, obedient, and weak, but in reality, he has always been jealous of the original owner, and constantly framed the female protagonist behind the scenes, making the whole family wrongly dislike the original owner. What made the original owner even more devastated was that Chen Yunnuo even seduced her fiancée, causing Zhou Jiacheng to directly withdraw from the marriage in front of all the guests at the recognition banquet held for Chen Yunnuo, causing her to lose face. The original owner thought that in this situation, the mother would at least protect her, but the mother and stepfather announced in front of everyone that the marriage between the two families would continue, except that the bride would be replaced by their other daughter. The Central Plains Lord also discovered clues from the performances of his mother and stepfather, as well as Chen Yunnuo and Zhou Jiacheng. It turned out that his mother and stepfather had long known about Chen Yunnuo and Zhou Jiacheng's collusion, but they concealed her and gave her such a big surprise. The original owner's long-standing patience and kindness finally erupted at the moment of being slapped in the face after being divorced. She broke away from her mother's fiancé and Chen Yunnuo, completely standing on their opposite side. When Ruan Tang saw this, he couldn't help but sigh, another pitiful person. The original protagonist was just a stepping stone on the path of love between the male and female protagonists. When he used it up, he kicked it away. Host, what's wrong with you? 477 spoke softly. Ruan Tang shook his head and continued to watch the plot. If it's just that, that's all. Chen Yunnuo never stopped mocking, suppressing, and bullying the original owner after taking the position of the original owner's family and fiancé AE. He even designed a car accident to murder the original owner. The original owner reported to the police that it was Chen Yunhua who wanted to murder him, but he was treated as a mental illness by his family and fiancée AE and sent to a nursing home. The original owner's twin brother wanted to save her, but he was framed by Chen Yunhua and Zhou Jiacheng, and was later killed alive. And the original owner also had mental problems after staying in the sanatorium for a long time. Later, Chen Yunhua showed the original owner a video of her younger brother being beaten to death, and the original owner's mind completely collapsed. She wanted to kill Chen Yunhua to pay for his brother's life, but was accidentally strangled by the bodyguard who protected Chen Yunhua. The original owner and younger brother both died tragically, while Chen Yunhua and Zhou Jiacheng got married. Their love has been widely spread and has become a beautiful story in the entertainment industry. I can tell a beautiful story about TMO. Ruan Tang couldn't help but curse. What a world-shattering thing. These two scumbags are still a beautiful story. Damn it. 477 quickly gave her a smooth ride and said, "Host, don't be angry. Aren't you here? Let's turn around, face each other, and bully the scum. I want to vote and leave a message." End of this chapter. 4. Chapter 4. The Distance from Artillery to Genius, 4. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. The Distance from Artillery to Genius, 4. Ruan Tang rolled up from the bed and strangely touched his stomach. "What's wrong with you, host? Are you feeling unwell?" 477 is very concerned. Although he sometimes plays with the host, argues, and even punishes her a little, deep down he is very respectful and admiring of the host. After all, the host is the only one he has ever seen that can walk horizontally in the Space Management Bureau. Ruan Tang continued to shake his head and said in frustration, "So the existence of scumbags is also valuable." 477 puzzled. What does it mean? Ruan Tang patted his belly and slowly said, "I'm already full of anger without seeing it." 477. So, the existence of scumbags does have some value. Ruan Tang raised his hand and touched the cute and adorable golden monster in the void. He mischievously curled his lips and said, "This is good. It can make me angry, so I can take action. If you accidentally hit a scumbag and a lowly woman with a heavy hand, then no wonder she." 477 trembled and said. The second time he was touched by a big shot, but he still didn't dare to move. "Look at your cowardly behavior, calling you stubborn and inappropriate." Ruan Tang looked disdainfully and withdrew his hand. 477 gritted his teeth and kept telling himself to endure. The little ancestor I dug myself must endure death. If you hold back, there will be a starry universe. Ruan Tang got out of bed and found the original owner's phone. The photos on the screen showed the original owner, his twin brothers, and a handsome and refined man. From the original owner's memory, it is obvious that this person is her biological father. From the photo, it can be seen that their family of 3 is very happy. The smile on the face of the original owner is something she has never seen since her mother brought her into this house. Even the original owner's brother is not the gloomy and hateful face in the plot. So, what is the last wish of the original owner? Ruan Tang followed the password in his memory and unlocked his phone. Revenge. Protect your younger brother. 477 nodded immediately and said, "I am truly the host, I can guess every time." Ruan Tang. Are you stupid? 477 snorted and ran straight to the corner of the wall to sit down, facing Ruan Tang with his furry buttocks. What? Are you trying to draw a circle and curse me? Ruan Tang chuckled and poked his soft buttocks. Don't be so stingy, I didn't bully you. 477 continued to hum, but remained silent. Although he is cowardly, he also has a temper. Ruan Tang turned around and continued to watch the plot. In addition to the original female lead and fiancée A, there was also an important villain character in this world, who was Mingyu, the stepson of the mother of the original lead. When the original owner and Mingyu first got to know each other, they got along well. It wasn't until Mingyu discovered that his mother's death was related to his stepmother that he gradually distanced himself from the original owner. Later, Mingyu was taken back by his maternal grandfather to inherit the family business, and the two had no further contact. When Mingyu returned to his home country, the original owner and family had already broken off. Although Mingyu hated the stepmother and father who indirectly killed his mother, he did not vent his anger towards the original owner, who was also a victim. His revenge targets have always been his stepmother and father, but due to the powerful aura of the original female and male protagonists, Mingyu's plans are always exposed. In the end, not only did he almost die in a car accident, but even the Ming family's industry was greatly affected. Mingyu, whose legs were disabled in a car accident, was taken back to the Ming family by his grandfather. Mingyu took the risk to return to his home country again, in order to collect the bodies and bury the two siblings who died tragically. This is all the memory of the original owner. And there are 3 last wishes from the original owner. One is to protect my younger brother and give them a warm reputation. The second is to make the mother and the male and female lead the family pay the due price to bear everything that their siblings have endured. The third is to strive to live in a way that these people can never reach. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. The Distance from Gunpowder to Genius, 5. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. The Distance from Artillery to Genius, 5. After reading these, Ruan Tang had a clue in his mind, so he reached out and tapped 477 directly. We're working. 477 immediately turned around, and both the pretense of innocence and astonishment on his face appeared. Host, the room door is closed, you can't leave. The door. Ruan Tang tilted his head and said meaningfully, who said he had to walk through the door? There's no window here. 477 was suddenly shocked. Host, don't joke about your life. We still have many tasks to complete. This is the 3rd floor, and the host doesn't have any martial arts skills now. If he jumps down, he will still have to fall to death. How can he hand over the task to the higher authorities then? Ruan Tang walked to the window to measure the height and then looked at the gauze curtains around the bed. 477. The host is very thin, but it may not be able to hold it. What are you afraid of? I'm not looking for death. Ruan Tang stood on tiptoe on the bed, took off the gauze tent, and found something to use as a rope. After tying it tightly, he returned to the balcony and tied one end of the newly made rope to the pillar. The other end was tied to the waist. Just as he was about to go down, a chill came from his forehead and his head became numb for a moment. The next second, Ruan Tang slowly said in his heart, I'm dead, I want to play punishment games. We can communicate slowly in our leisure time. When my aunt is doing something important, do you dare to touch me? Do you want to die or do you want to die? 477 sincerely dare not. The host's personal safety is the most important, and it doesn't matter if this task is not completed. Anyway, we don't lack points, and the host must be alive. Besides, during his leisure time, it's the host bullying him. How dare he punish the host? Ruan Tang, don't touch me, if you dare to touch me when I go down, then I will really ignore it and fall to death. What will you do then? Ruan Tang said as he climbed over the railing and tried to squat down for the next action. She has already grabbed the bottom of the guardrail pillar with both hands. As long as she jumps down and takes protective measures, she can reach the balcony on the 2nd floor. The main character appears. 477 suddenly prompts. Ruan Tang was taken aback, the main character. It's not a strategy game, it just appears. Why scare her? She continued to climb down and heard 477 anxiously say, Bad host, the young master of the Ming family has appeared. Young master of the Ming family. Mingyu. Ruan Tang was really confused now. How could he come back at this time? In the original plot, it wasn't after the original owner and his mother's fiancé broke up that he returned to China. 477 also doesn't know. Perhaps our intervention changed the plot, so he came back early. Show up as soon as you appear. I'm really starving, and even if he comes back, he can't stop my determination to eat. After Ruan Tang finished speaking, he commanded 477, first, give me a pitiful and delicate special effect with a pale face. 477 puzzled. Why? Ruan Tang tilted his head slightly and saw a car speeding towards him from the entrance of the villa. In the plot, Mingyu is an important villain. We have a common enemy and a common language, and the enemy can temporarily become friends. Moreover, one of the original owner's wishes is to protect Mingyu and his brother. Of course, we need to work together at this time, said Ruan Tang. 477 is very intolerable, but we cannot refuse the host's request. Just a gentle way to say. However, even if you want to hug your thighs, you can still choose a gentler way. Falling directly from the third floor with a bloated head and legs in 2 or 3 pieces, that's too tragic. Hugging your thighs. That's insulting her personality. Ruan Tang snorted and saw the person in the car stepping out of one foot. Suddenly, he let out a scream and lightly touched his right hand on his waist. As soon as the rope flew out, she also fell towards the building. Voting, the comments on the message board are even cuter. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. The Distance from Gunpowder to Genius, 6. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. The Distance from Artillery to Genius, 6, 477 exclaimed urgently, the host is really rebellious, always taking such an unusual path. Unfortunately, he can't be punished yet. He's really anxious. When Ruan Tang fell, she didn't forget to give 477 a comforting look. Even if this stepbrother didn't take action, she still had a way to save herself. But since my stepbrother returned to China early, we must give him an unforgettable first encounter, otherwise how can we recall the beautiful memories he had with his original owner 7 years ago? As the host was about to land, 477 thought about starting to block pain and saw a dark shadow passing underneath. Immediately after, her host also fell steadily into the man's arms. 477 sat down paralyzed, his heart hanging high, finally returning to its original position. As long as the host is fine. As long as the host is fine, if the task fails, it can be redone. Ruan Tang, on the other hand, tightly closed her eyes, and after shouting as soon as she fell, she only pursed her lips. She was visibly trembling with fear, and there was no trace of blood on her face, but she struggled not to cry out. What Mingyu saw was such a stubborn and lovable girl. Except for the moment when he just fell, his arms seemed to be about to break off from the jack, and now he didn't feel much weight, making people immediately notice that Ruan Tang's body didn't have much weight. Young master, how are you? The person following broke the original silence. The man shook his head and released the person in his arms, saying, "Are you okay?" After hearing the sound, Ruan Tang slowly opened his eyes. His pale and pitiful little face was filled with the panic of falling from a height and the disbelief of why she was okay. She stared at the man for a few seconds, then looked at the familiar man beside her and spoke with difficulty and caution, "Are you, Mingyu? Brother?" The man seemed stunned for a moment. He looked at Ruan Tang's expectant yet uncertain expression, not knowing what was on his mind. He suddenly lowered his face and pushed away the person in his arms. Ruan Tang was momentarily stunned and said, "You." She seemed to have been splashed with a bucket of ice water, her excitement and anticipation turned into embarrassment and confusion, standing in a daze and despair. Mingyu was on the side, and due to his height advantage, he could clearly see the girl with her head slightly trembling in his eyes. For some reason, he felt that the girl in front of him, who lowered her head, was extremely aggrieved, but still stubbornly clenched her fists and trembled slightly, was more cherished than when she had just fallen from upstairs and was scared out of her wits. Especially, the girl lowered her head to look at him. I'm puzzled, helpless, panicked, lost. Every emotion is like a stone, hitting him hard in the heart. It's really strange. Young master, are your arms okay? The assistant is not in the mood to take care of the daughter of the young master's enemy. No matter how light the girl in front of her is, if she falls from such a high height, the gravity will not be small. The young master must have injured her arm when he picked her up. Mingyu did have some problems with his arm, but he didn't show it. Instead, let the assistant care about the girl in front of them. If the truth about his mother's death was not found 7 years ago, I don't know that this girl's mother was the one who intervened in his parents' marriage and indirectly killed his mother. Perhaps they would still be like 7 years ago. He will try to be a good brother, and she is also the beautiful little girl who works hard to live in a new family and is always happy and likable. The assistant couldn't help but coldly ask Ruan Tang, is Miss Lu okay? You're already quite old, so you can't joke about your own life. It's too irresponsible. Also implicated their young master. Vote and vote. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. The Distance from Gunpowder to Genius, 7. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. The Distance from Artillery to Genius, 7, 477 gritted his teeth and said, What attitude do you have? How dare you speak to my host like this? I'm really angry with him. He's going to bite the person in front of him. Ruan Tang was stunned for a moment before pointing his finger at himself with an uncertain tone. Are you asking me? The assistant looked speechless, she was the only girl here. Who did she ask without asking? Or rather, what bad idea is this wicked stepmother's daughter having? Ruan Tang smiled awkwardly and said, Then you got the wrong person. My surname is not Lu, my surname is Ruan, my name is Ruan Tang. Lu is her stepfather's surname, but she has always followed her biological father's surname. But soon there will be a lady named Lu. After all, her dear mother has decided to adopt the obedient daughter who was raised with her financial support, and all the procedures are almost completed. After speaking, not only the assistant, but also Mingyu's expression changed. She didn't change her surname. Mingyu remembers that when Ruan Tang was first taken home by his stepmother, he was still very timid, but he was also wary of everyone around him, as if everyone was a big villain. Later on, in order to please her father, her stepmother kept asking Ruan Tang to change her surname, which caused her to break ties with the past and become the true Lu family. Ruan Tang has a stubborn personality. Every time her stepmother brings up this topic, she loudly refutes it and refuses to change her surname no matter what. After being scolded by her stepmother, she runs back to her room without even eating and pitifully calls her father and twin brothers. Many times when he went upstairs to deliver food, he saw her dropping golden beans. They have been together for almost a year, and my stepmother has been talking about this issue all along. Unexpectedly, 7 years have passed and she hasn't really changed her surname. Why did you come out of the window? The assistant felt as if he had misunderstood. The delicate girl in front of him, who seemed to be easily swayed by a gust of wind, was not like the arrogant and ruthless stepdaughter he had imagined, with a deep cunning heart, brought in by his wicked stepmother. Ruan Tang looked at the window of the third-floor bedroom in horror, as if recalling the fear of falling from a height. She instinctively shuddered, but quickly lowered her head and said, I've been hungry for a long time and can't come out, so. Not much to say, but the meaning conveyed is quite sufficient. Whether it's Mingyu or her assistant, they are all people who have fought countless battles in a market full of conspiracies and schemes. They have also seen various dirty and secretive people in families like the Lu family. How could they not understand what she is expressing? The assistants were all stunned, and he looked at Mingyu with suspicion. It seems like you're saying that your scumbag father, who only sees profit in his eyes, not only imprisons himself and abuses his stepdaughter, but also refuses to feed the little girl. No wonder I couldn't help but jump off the 3rd floor. He's still not a person. Mingyu frowned and shook his head almost imperceptibly. His father is ruthless and values profit the most, but he also values his reputation and saves face. He wouldn't let himself have such a scandal of mistreating his stepdaughter. When it comes to abusing Ruan Tang, all he can think of is the stepmother who appears gentle, generous, and works hard to maintain family harmony, but has a deep mind and only wants to drive him out and monopolize the family's property. After all, when she first married into their family, her stepmother often personally cooked breakfast for him to please him, and even warmly wanted to pick him up and take him to school. But a woman who treats her stepson well and is labeled as a virtuous wife and mother, all over her body never remembers what her biological daughter likes and dislikes. I don't even know that Ruan Tang is allergic to alcohol. When he was still alive, his stepmother threatened Ruan Tang to change her surname by locking the door and refusing to provide food. Unexpectedly, 7 years have passed and her malice has not diminished at all, but has become even more severe. Otherwise, how could she be forced to jump off the 3rd floor like she didn't want to die? End of this chapter. Chapter 8. The Distance from Artillery to Genius, 8. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. The Distance from Artillery to Genius, 8, the reversal comes so fast. Not to mention he was the assistant who had a deep hostility towards Ruan Tang, and now he was all apologetic. What is the preconceived view of a malicious stepmother? Otherwise, he wouldn't be so cold and sarcastic towards a little girl he met for the first time. 477 has already raised his paw and said, "The host is really smart." He immediately made the villain and his followers change their view of you. Ruan Tang still had no blood on his face, while Wei Chu Baba snorted in his heart. After all, Gao Ling's Mingyu and the original owner had some pretty good memories. He had a good impression of the original owner himself and knew what the original owner's mother meant by bringing the original owner into the wealthy family. Therefore, when it comes to the relationship between the original owner and the malicious stepmother, he naturally leans more towards the original owner. Otherwise, in the original plot, Mingyu, who has blackened out the cause of his mother's death, will retaliate against the original owner together. 477, still the host's mind is meticulous. It's time to eat, I've been fussing around for so long, I'm really hungry. Ruan Tang said and touched his stomach. Unfortunately, with a goo sound, the original silence was shattered. Mingyu finally withdrew from his memories and looked back at the girl he hadn't seen in 7 years. In his memory, Ruan Tang was already born extremely beautiful. When we met, Ruan Tang was just a 10-year-old girl who entered a strange home. Although she was on guard against the people around her, she was very close and clingy to his older brother, who was a few years older than her. Later, when I saw Xiao Ruan Tang, who was already sharp-tongued and hot-tempered at a young age, and his stepmother arguing and refusing to argue over the change of surname. I also heard the tearful little girl tugging at his shirt and complaining to him that she didn't like her mother, didn't want to move, and didn't want to leave her father and brother. By comparing himself to others, he naturally became interested in the little girl. Slowly accepting her existence. If it weren't for the coincidence of hearing the conversation between my father and stepmother and knowing the true reason for my mother's death, perhaps they would also be very close siblings now. Recalling the lively little girl from the past, it is inevitable to recall the eye-catching scene he saw in the car. She was forced to jump off the building, indicating that her life at this house was not very easy after he left. Adieu, go have someone prepare dinner. After giving instructions to the assistant, Mingyu looked at Ruan Tang again and said, "Did you hurt anything just now?" Adu was about to leave, but stopped and said, "Young master, why don't you take a look at your arm quickly?" Ruan Tang was originally surprised but couldn't believe it. Mingyu, who pushed herself away with a cold face full of disgust, would care about her. But when he heard the assistant's words, his eyes immediately shifted to Mingyu's arm and said, are you really injured? My eyes were filled with worries, but I never dared to approach again. Mingyu looked at her suddenly darkened eyes, her chest unexpectedly feeling a bit stuffy. If he didn't push her away, wouldn't she have to be as careful about him as if she had made a mistake? If you're injured, quickly call the family doctor. He only came a few days ago when I had stomach pain. With a pause in his words, Mingyu lowered his head and saw her slightly gloomy expression. Stomach pain. It seems that locking the door and not giving food are common things, otherwise how could Ruan Tang have stomach pain and no way to jump off a building? His scumbag father and stepmother are really a perfect match. How could a little girl who was forced to be like this by her biological mother not feel uncomfortable? Thinking of this, Mingyu's chest became even more oppressive and uncomfortable. As he approached the door, Mingyu suddenly froze for a moment. He came back for revenge, but now he feels sorry for his enemy's daughter. What a ghost. Happy holidays. Vote. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. The Distance from Gunpowder to Genius, 9. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. The Distance from Artillery to Genius, 9. Seeing Mingyu strode towards home with a fierce aura that seemed to suggest accountability, Ruan Tang slowly curled his lips. In her memory, the mother of the original protagonist, Chen Huiya, informed the original protagonist yesterday morning that she wanted to take the female lead, Chen Yunhua, as her adopted daughter. Prior to this, Chen Yunhua had already visited his home several times. The original owner felt aggrieved in her heart and loudly questioned why she couldn't give her and her brother a little love, as she could treat strangers as her own daughter to love. Even a little bit. But Chen Huiya is notifying her, not discussing with her. When the original owner was angry, he said that Chen Huiya brought her into the wealthy family with this dragging oil bottle just to show her kindness and maternal love to her stepfather and prove that she can do well as the hostess. Just like sponsoring Chen Yunhua, it's just for her reputation in the circle of wealthy women. A few words exposed the true face of Chen Huiya's hypocritical calculations. Still in front of my stepfather and other servants at home. Chen Huiya couldn't save face and slapped the original owner directly. Later, she was afraid that the original owner would run to complain to the twin brothers and let the more difficult brother teach her a lesson. Chen Huiya simply had her feet locked. According to the original plot, Chen Huiya will bring the adopted daughter back tonight. Ruan Tang thought back on the plot, and his gaze fell on Mingyu, who was tall, handsome, but deep and indifferent. There's a great show to watch tonight. Watch the way. A cold voice came, and Ruan Tang was startled as someone had already pulled his arm. She was taken aback and looked up to see the steps in front of her. If it weren't for Mingyu's kindness in holding her down, she would probably have been intimately getting along with the steps by now. Of course, she might even lose her cute and useful teeth. Thank you. Ruan Tang awkwardly withdrew his arm. She is very self-aware. Mingyu has already shown a sense of estrangement before, and she will not actively approach. Ruan Tang walked in first, but Mingyu was a bit stunned as he looked at her back. Sure enough, she still cared that he pushed her away at that time. Mingyu's assistant is someone trained by his grandfather and has never been to the Lu family. Even the servants at home do not know him. Aunt Sue was about to inquire when she saw Ruan Tang, who should not have appeared. Miss, how could you? Aunt Sue looked surprised and shocked when she saw Ruan Tang. Miss is not locked in the room, why is she here? Ruan Tang didn't answer and instead asked, my mother. Ms. Chen. Where has she gone? Aunt Sue paused with a nervous expression and said, where has Madam gone? How can I, as a servant, know? The reason why the young lady and the lady argued is very clear to her, but she also doesn't understand. Her biological daughter doesn't care, but she is so kind to a girl who has no blood relationship. She really can't figure it out. Do wealthy people think that other people's children are better than their own? Strange, why does the lady call her Mrs. Chen? Yesterday I heard the lady say that if the lady insists on adopting that girl, she will sever the mother-daughter relationship. Is she serious? Aunt Sue, why did we argue yesterday and why did she lock my room? You know, did she go to pick up that beautiful adopted daughter? As soon as Ruan Tang spoke, Aunt Sue trembled with fear. Miss Ruan is usually very friendly to these servants, so it's a bit scary to argue with her wife. She received Miss Ruan's cold gaze for the first time. It's really scary. After hearing these words, Mingyu at the door also stopped in place. What adopted daughter? Happy holidays, vote. End of this chapter. 10, Chapter 10. The distance from artillery to genius, 10. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. The distance from artillery to genius, 10, however, this girl's temper remains the same as before. When she gets angry, no one pays attention, like a little chili pepper. Host, your stepbrother is eavesdropping outside. 477 said. Ruan Tang curled his lower lip invisibly and said, I know he wants to see my changes and the attitude of Ms. Chen, whom I hate, so let him see clearly. 477 continues to watch the live broadcast. Please help me monitor Ms. Chen's whereabouts. I guess she should be on her way back with her adopted daughter. After finishing speaking, Ruan Tang looked sharply at Aunt Sue and said, Aunt Sue, have you taken care of me for 7 years? Don't you think I can't compare to the orphan who has been sponsored by Ms. Chen in your eyes? Mingyu was momentarily stunned upon hearing these words. How could someone who doesn't even care about their own children care so much about a sponsored orphan? What conspiracy is his stepmother plotting again? Mingyu already had a lot of hatred towards his stepmother, and when Ruan Tang said so, he also planted seeds of doubt in his heart. It seems that both the stepmother and the soon-to-be adopted daughter need to be thoroughly investigated. My stepmother has always been afraid that he, the only son, will dominate the company established by her father, so she wants to have a younger son to inherit the family business and support her. It is ridiculous that in his eyes, the family business that his stepmother has always regarded as treasure is just evidence that his father betrayed and deceived his mother. For so many years, my stepmother has not been pregnant and suddenly wants to adopt an orphan. If we talk about the tricks involved, then there's a ghost. It has to be said that the intelligence of the Blackened villains is still very high. Ruan Tang's words perfectly aroused his suspicion and vigilance. If Mingyu personally took action, it would take even less time to uncover the truth. 477 positioned Chen Huiya and Chen Yunhua while saying, Host, the villain has already suspected. Ruan Tang still had a stubborn and aggrieved expression on his face, but his heart was filled with joy. This is not obvious. 477. A moment of heartache flashed on Aunt Sue's face, and she naturally understood the pain in the young lady's heart. However, when she thought of Madame's methods and temper, she shook her head again. I know if you don't say it, but I won't be in this family soon. When she brings back the adopted daughter, I'll move out and I won't live under the same roof with them. It's disgusting, said Ruan Tang with great disdain. Due to not eating, his face turned pale and his figure was thin and weak, looking like a little cabbage under pressure. However, the coldness and aloofness in her eyes instantly elevated her image. Not to mention the assistant, even Mingyu, who was openly eavesdropping, shook his head helplessly. With this temper, a person as harsh as her stepmother can tolerate 7 years, and it's really unfair to her. Of course, the most aggrieved thing is Xiaojiao. If she grew up with her biological father and brother, she might be spoiled to some extent. Aunt Sue suddenly became anxious and said, Miss, don't be impulsive. Madame only hits you when she's angry for a while. It will be over in 2 days. Did she hit you? A gloomy and indifferent voice suddenly came in, and Aunt Sue was startled. This person she seems to have seen it somewhere before, but she can't recall it. Aunt Sue was the person chosen by Chen Huiya after Mingyu went abroad. At that time, everything about the original wife and young master and the family was put away, and she had not seen Mingyu. Ruan Tang turned his head and saw Mingyu, who was clearly a bit angry. Her eyelashes trembled, and she turned over to hide her forced expression of not being sad. It seems like she wasn't the one who spoke harshly just now. Mingyu strode towards her with a cold and terrifying expression. That woman surprisingly treated her like this. My stepbrother is angry voting ballots, end of this chapter.